the banana that already died. Once this is the second time in 70 years that the banana industry has watched its own future rot in the ground. The first time, it lost a fruit people still talk about with something close to grief. This time, it might lose the only banana most of the world has ever tasted. Start with the one you know. If you have eaten a banana in the last 50 years, in almost any country on Earth, you were eating a Cavendish. It's the most common banana by a landslide, making up roughly 99% of all banana exports worldwide. Every Cavendish plant on the planet is, genetically, the same plant. Not similar, the same. Bananas do not really have seeds anymore, not the kind you'd plant, so farmers grow them from cuttings of the parent plant instead. That means a banana grove in the Philippines and a banana grove in Ecuador are, biologically speaking, clones of each other, separated by 9,000 miles and nothing else. That fact alone should put you on edge. It's exactly what makes this story possible. But the Cavendish was not always the banana. Before it, there was another one, and people who are old enough to remember it still say it ruined every banana that came after. It was called the Gros Michel, Big Mike, to the people who grew it and shipped it and built entire economies around it. From the late 1800s until the 1950s, Big Mike was the banana, full stop, the only variety most people in the United States had ever eaten. By every account, richer and sweeter than what we eat now, harder to bruise, easier to ship. Companies built rail lines through Central America just to move it. Whole national economies, especially across parts of Latin America, were restructured around growing, packing, and exporting it. The term banana republic was coined about this exact era for this exact fruit. And then, quietly, in the soil, something started killing it. It was a fungus, Fusarium oxysporum, and the disease it caused came to be known as Panama disease. It did not attack the fruit, it attacked the plant's plumbing. The fungus forces its way into the roots and clogs the vascular system, the pathways the plant uses to move water and nutrients, until the whole plant wilts and dies from the inside. There was no cure. There still isn't. Once the fungus is in the soil, it can survive there for decades, and no amount of chemical treatment reliably kills it. Plantations tried to outrun it, clearing new land as old fields died. It did not work. By the 1950s and 60s, Panama disease had swept through Central America and the Caribbean and brought the Gros Michel to the edge of commercial extinction. The economic damage has been estimated at over $2 billion in an era when $2 billion was an almost unthinkable sum for a single crop. And here is the detail that should have scared everyone permanently. The reason the industry couldn't breed its way out of the crisis is that commercial bananas, remember, don't really have seeds. You cannot crossbreed a seedless plant the way you would corn or wheat. Scientists were, in the words of one botanical summary, powerless to breed resistance into a fruit that couldn't reproduce sexually in the first place. So the industry did the only thing it could. It went looking for a replacement, and it found one sitting almost forgotten in botanical gardens and research collections. The Cavendish, smaller, thought of at the time as blander, harder to grow well, but resistant to the strain of Panama disease that was wiping out Big Mike. It was not a scientific triumph so much as a desperate substitution. The industry didn't choose the Cavendish because it was better. It chose the Cavendish because everything else was dying. By the time the switch was mostly complete, an entire generation had grown up never tasting the banana their parents grew up on. And here is a strange little postscript to that. If you've ever eaten banana-flavored candy, banana Laffy Taffy, banana runts, and thought, that tastes nothing like a real banana, you are not imagining it. There's a popular claim that the flavor was modeled directly on the old Gros Michel before it vanished. Food historians say that's not quite literally true, since the flavoring itself existed before the crash. But there's a real chemical reason the story took hold anyway. Gros Michel bananas carry noticeably more of a compound called isoamyl acetate than Cavendish bananas do, and that compound happens to be the backbone of artificial banana flavor. So even if the timeline of the myth is a little off, the sensory ghost is real. Every piece of banana candy is, in some accidental way, closer to the taste of a fruit most of the world has never touched. That is Act 1. Banana dies. Industry panics. New banana rises from the wreckage. World moves on and mostly forgets. If the story stopped there, it would just be an interesting bit of agricultural history. It didn't stop there. In the late 1960s, researchers in Taiwan found something troubling in a Cavendish plantation. Panama disease again. A different strain this time, one the Cavendish had no resistance to. For a while, it stayed relatively contained, mostly in parts of Asia. Then, at the end of the 1980s, that Taiwanese strain was formally identified and given a name, Tropical Race 4, or TR4. And TR4 does not care that the Cavendish was supposed to be the disease-resistant one. It infects the Cavendish just as effectively as the original strain destroyed the Gros Michel. Since then, it has not stopped moving. From Taiwan, TR4 spread through Southeast Asia. It reached the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, mainland China. It turned up in Australia's Northern Territory, then in Queensland. It crossed into the Middle East, confirmed in Jordan, then Lebanon, then Oman. It reached Mozambique, on the African continent, and India and Pakistan. By 2018, researchers were tracking it across 16 countries. Within a handful of years, that number had climbed to 23. For a long time, there was one piece of geography working in the banana industry's favor: Latin America and the Caribbean, which export the overwhelming majority of the world's bananas, home to 7 of the 10 largest banana exporting countries on Earth, had stayed clean. TR4 free. Every outbreak, every quarantine, every devastated plantation had happened somewhere else. That changed in August of 2019. Officials in Colombia's Institute of Agriculture confirmed TR4 in the La Guajira region, in the country's north. The government declared a national emergency. Of the roughly 175 hectares in the affected zone, more than 168 were destroyed outright. Plants burned and buried to try to slow the spread. Shipping containers at nearby ports were disinfected. One expert told National Geographic at the time that by the point you can see the disease, it has already spread beyond where you can see it. That is the nature of a soil-borne fungus. It moves in dirt on tires, on boots, in irrigation water, long before a single leaf turns yellow. Colombia was not the end of it. TR4 was confirmed in Peru in 2021, disrupting hundreds of small organic banana farms in the country's north. It was confirmed in Venezuela in 2023, spreading across plantations in multiple states. It has been found in plantain too. That's the part that should worry you. Plantain is a dietary staple across large parts of the world, a primary source of calories for millions of people who never touch an exported Cavendish at all. A researcher at the University of Exeter, who studies food security, put it about as bluntly as a scientist ever puts anything. This is close to an apocalyptic scenario for the Cavendish. Not because the fruit will vanish overnight, it won't, but because the exact vulnerability that let this happen once is still built into the system. Every Cavendish plant is still a clone of every other Cavendish plant. There is still no seed-based breeding program that can simply engineer resistance in a generation. The industry is, once again, watching a fungus outpace its ability to adapt. Here's the part of the story that rarely forces its way into the headlines. Bananas grown for export, the ones shipped, branded, and sold in supermarkets outside the tropics, are only a fraction of all the bananas grown on Earth, roughly 16% of total global production. The other 84% are eaten locally, close to where they're grown, by smallholder farmers and their communities, in places where a banana crop failure is not an inconvenience at the grocery store. It's a direct hit to food security and household income. Costa Rica's banana sector alone employs an estimated 40,000 people directly and another 100,000 indirectly. Multiply that kind of exposure across every banana-growing country in Latin America, and the stakes stop looking like a supermarket problem and start looking like a regional one. So where does that leave the story that started with Big Mike? Researchers are trying multiple paths at once. Some are screening wild banana relatives for natural TR4 resistance that might be crossed into new varieties, using tissue culture techniques that sidestep the seedless breeding problem that stumped scientists back in the 1950s. Some are experimenting with genetic modification directly, inserting resistance genes rather than waiting for them to appear naturally. Quarantine and biosecurity measures, the kind that have kept the disease contained to a single valley in parts of Australia for years, are being studied and copied elsewhere as a stopgap. None of it is a guaranteed fix. All of it is racing a fungus that can sit dormant in soil for decades, waiting. What's genuinely strange about this history isn't that a fungus is dangerous. Fungi kill crops constantly. What's strange is that the fix for the first crisis created the conditions for the second one. The Cavendish was never chosen for its flavor or its resilience. It was chosen because it happened to be immune to the one disease everyone was watching for at the time. Nobody solved the underlying problem, which is that a monoculture, a single genetically identical crop grown across an entire hemisphere, will always be one new pathogen away from disaster. They just bought themselves 70 years. The banana you ate this week has already lived through one extinction event that wiped out its predecessor completely. It is now living through the early stages of a second one in real time, in soil in Colombia and Peru and Venezuela, spreading in exactly the pattern the last one did. Whether this story earns a third act, a Gros Michel and a Cavendish, followed by something new, or whether science finally breaks the cycle this time, is one of the more quietly high-stakes questions in global agriculture right now. Either way, the next time someone tells you bananas are boring, you'll know better.